Alright, in this tutorial I'm going to import the model I have created in the prior tutorials. I will perform some material adjustments, say for instance for the glass, and then we will put some plants in the garden. Okay, first step is to go to the folder where we have the model and drag it into a folder I have already prepared, import and models. This import folder also contains two other folders, one for the textures, one for the materials. Selecting the model in the inspector and under the model tab, we're going to make sure that the cameras and lights are unchecked. We can check light map UVs, hit apply. Then in the materials tab, we select extract textures, navigate to the textures folder, select that folder. For the textures to be unpacked, next extract the materials, import materials folder, select folder, and then we have the model. I'm starting with this basic space scene, which we will always want to have as a starting point. I will save this as a new scene under the scenes folder and call this tutorial. So before we can bring in this geometry, which is too large for this space, we can change this scaling of the room by, let's say, 4 and 4. So it's really large. If you don't want to see these walls on the side, you can expand the room, select all the walls, and deactivate the mesh renderer. The mesh collider will still be active, meaning when you bounce against these invisible walls now, or bump, then the collision will be detected. Okay, so next I drag the model into the scene. So here we have it. And we see that the materials and textures came across quite nicely. Now let's expand this a little bit. We see that the layer structure from Rhino has been carried over. So we have some floors. We can select all these meshes, named as we named them in Rhino, add a component, which would be a mesh collider. And since they are floors, they should also be on the layer floor, so the wheelchair will detect them. Then the roofs don't need mesh colliders, and the walls do. So we select all the sub-objects on the walls. Again, add a component mesh collider. So now let's say we want the wheelchair to use this upper floor. We can select the rig and then drag it to the desired position. Always make sure that the wheelchair is placed slightly above the floor. Slightly above is fine, but not inside the floor. So when you look at the wheels, you will see that. And with that, the simulation would already be playable. Now, plants. Let's open the browser and navigate to the assetstore.unity.com. The asset store is a collection of items and extensions for Unity. Some are free, some are commercial, which you can add to your Unity collection. And there we can search for plants. And I have identified a few that are free. For instance, this Japanese garden pack. So you always get a preview of such an asset and a description. If you want that asset and you're logged in to the asset store, if you're not, you will see an icon here that allows you to log in. You can simply say add to my assets. Then you would accept, and then this will become available in Unity. There's also a stylized plants kit that is free, Again, we'll add this to my assets, and a free bushes pack. Again, add this to my assets. So, and then there we have free trees. So I'm adding those trees also. And that's how you can build a collection of assets that are then available for your Unity projects. And let's say I also want these lemon trees. So again, I add these to my assets. Now, when we return to the project, the assets are not there yet, but they are now accessible. If we go to Window, Package Manager, and that opens a window which we can drag, for instance, next to the game view. So in the assets, you may be in Unity registry or in project or in my assets, which is what we want. And I have very many assets, so the list in the beginning will be empty for you or already contain rather the assets you have acquired from the asset store. So let's see, the Japanese garden pack is the first one I want to import. So let's go to the search bar, type Japanese or Japan, already recognizes this. You select it here, also it gets a blue background, and then you would download the asset. This can take a moment depending on the size. Then you can hit import, where you get a list of all the components this asset contains. You hit import. And here I had to make a cut as I was recording this video, because when I imported these assets from the asset store via the package manager, I found that many have rendering errors, meaning they don't show up correctly. So what I found was that these assets, for the most part, would require a commercial asset and then a technique that fixes what's called the shaders. So that's code that renders all sorts of geometry in Unity, and how that can be done is way beyond the scope of this course. So I did it for you, and I packaged these assets in a file that already is adjusted. You find it in our class folder under Unity and Packages in two versions. One is a zip, so that's safe to download. If you are on a Mac, I would definitely suggest you do this and then unpack it on your local hard drive. If you're on Windows, you can also download this, which doesn't need unpacking. And when you have that downloaded, you can go to the assets folder, then to the folder where you have downloaded this so-called Unity package, and simply drag it into your assets folder. This will then look similar to when you import the package from the asset store, and you would hit import. That import can then take a while because there's a lot of content in here. And when that import is complete, you get a new folder in your assets folder that's called MG3 vegetation. And that contains these assets where you find prefabs. So the prefabs have this box-like icon, and in the inspector you get the preview of that prefab, and there are very many prefabs in these subfolders here. So for instance, when we go to these bushes, there's a prefabs folder, and there you have these bushes. Then in this Waldemarst, we have the Japanese garden package. Again, there are prefabs. Always look out for this box symbol. And there you then have some of the trees. There was one that has a pink trunk, so that is one that still has this rendering error. So evidently I was not able to completely eliminate it, but by and large I believe I I did. Okay, so let's go for instance to this realistic tree pack, which is actually a commercial package which I'm sharing with you. So there is a cherry tree, which I quite like, and let's say I found a prefab of a plant that would fit the project in my view. I can simply drag it into our scene and then position that tree wherever I feel it would look good. You can always scale it, so this tree is a bit large. Scale it to 0.7 in the X, Y, and Z direction. So the tree is now a little smaller. And you can do this with all the many prefabs that are in here. So what do we have in Lumia? There is this lemon tree, smaller tree, so really small. This would then need upscaling, let's say by 5, 5, and 5. Oh no, that's too big. 3, 3, and 3. And there we would then have our trees in our project. And the same is true for all the prefabs, so long as they don't have this pinkish appearance which indicates persistent rendering error. Feel free to explore this folder, MG-free vegetation, find prefabs you like when you want to make plants. It's not a super comprehensive compilation, but to enliven the scene, I believe we already see that it can do quite a bit. So you may wonder why we are using these trees and not, say, for instance, V-Ray trees or Enscape trees or other kinds of trees, say those we can download from Sketchfab. The reason is that these trees are highly optimized for real-time computer graphics, which is what we do in VR, and high polygon trees with very complex geometries would, if we manage to import them, slow down the simulation. So regarding the materials, I just wanted to briefly revisit this topic of transparency, and here we have this single-sided glass, which in the prior tutorial I explained is invisible from the inside because the normals are pointing outside, versus here we have this glass that is solid geometry, so we see it is visible from both sides. But it is also relatively opaque. So when we go to the materials of our imported geometry, we find the glass material. And in the inspector, we see that it is of the type Universal Render Pipeline Lit, is metallic and transparent, and the transparency can be controlled if we click next to this colored bar in the base map. And there is a slider where it says A, so that's the alpha channel that controls the transparency. So if we slide this to the right, the material becomes more opaque. If we slide it to the left, it becomes more transparent. So that's how you can control the transparency. And if you want to make it a little bit reflective, you can also crank up the smoothness, and that can then give you a slightly reflective effect. So it's not very strong, but a little bit. In this base map, you can also change the color. So let's make this glass a little bit bluish. And this will then affect all the meshes in our project that have that material. Right? So slider A controls the transparency. And that was it for this tutorial.